Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to completely dismantle that romanticized perception of climbing Mount Everest. You know the image, a lone explorer battling the elements against impossible odds. Well, looking at the stark and frankly shocking reality of modern mountaineering, that picture is basically shattered. Instead of isolated triumph, we're seeing life-threatening congestion. So get ready, because we are unpacking the mechanics, the dangers, and the profound ethical questions surrounding this Everest crowding crisis. All right, let's just dive right into this truly wild statistic. 270. In just a single 24-hour window, a record-breaking 270 individuals reached the peak of Everest. I mean, take a second to really visualize that number. Think about a packed commercial airplane. Now, transport all those people, put them in bulky down suits, give them heavy oxygen tanks, and stick them on a narrow precipice over 29,000 feet in the air. Imagine paying tens of thousands of dollars to stand in the line that is literally colder than Antarctica. It's a mind-boggling logistical reality that completely redefines what climbing this mountain actually means today. So this massive surge in popularity immediately begs a pretty critical question, right? What mechanically happens when the top of the world completely runs out of room? Keep in mind, we aren't talking about a wide-open plateau at the summit. We're talking about jagged, razor-thin ridges where just one misstep means a drop of thousands of feet. When hundreds of people converge on a space meant for, well, almost no one, the environment ceases to be just a natural challenge. It becomes a deeply complex, incredibly dangerous human traffic management problem, all operating in one of the most hostile environments on the entire planet. Let's look at Section 1, the Everest illusion, solitude versus reality. The really crucial point here is understanding the mechanics of a bottleneck. Basically, a bottleneck occurs in a narrow section of a climbing route where mountaineers are literally forced to slow down or come to a complete dead stop. When you have this record influx of climbers, everyone is forced into a creeping halt. You're no longer moving at your own pace, you're moving at the pace of the absolute slowest person in front of you. In normal, everyday life, a bottleneck is just an annoyance, But on Mount Everest, as we're going to see, it is a very real matter of life and death. Moving on to Section 2. 270 climbers, 24 hours, a record rush. So what exactly caused this? Well, three specific factors perfectly combined to push hundreds of individuals toward the peak at the exact same moment. First up, you have a record-breaking surge in climbing popularity. Everest has kind of become this highly sought-after ultimate trophy. But the mountain dictates the schedule. Climbers have to wait down at base camp for the weather to clear. And in this specific case, nature provided an extremely narrow 24-hour weather window. Finally, because the industry itself has grown so much, you have the convergence of multiple commercial expeditions all getting the exact same weather forecast. So what do? They all mobilize at once. It's essentially a perfect storm, creating a massive funnel effect straight to the summit. Which brings us to Section 3, the death zone bottleneck, waiting at 29,000 feet. Let's look at how this inevitably unfolds into such a deeply hazardous situation. Step 1. That narrow weather window we just talked about forces everyone out of their tents at the exact same time. Step 2. All those climbers hit the narrow, single-file ridges near the summit, places like the famous Hillary Step. There is absolutely no passing lane here. You are clipped onto a single safety rope, which naturally leads to Step 3. Slower individuals who might be exhausted or just less experienced slow down, and literally everyone behind them is forced to stop. The traffic jam is formed, and it is entirely immovable. And here is exactly why that is so catastrophic. At 29,000 feet, your supplemental oxygen is strictly finite. You only carry exactly what you need to get up and get back down, and that's based on continuous movement. Standing completely still in sub-zero temperatures while rapidly depleting your bottled oxygen, that puts every single person in that queue at critical risk of frostbite and absolute exhaustion. Your body just isn't generating heat from movement, and every single minute you spend waiting for that line to move is a minute of oxygen you won't have for the descent. Let's check out Section 4, the toll on guides, disproportionate danger. We really need to talk about the glaring inequality on the mountain here. For the experienced climbers and the paying clients, the risk is tremendous, for sure. Oxygen depletion and frostbite from waiting in that single queue to the top. But the local guides, the Sherpas, they face vastly increased exposure times. That's because they are constantly moving around the bottlenecks to fix lines, assist struggling climbers, and ferry those extra oxygen tanks back and forth. They are carrying the absolute heaviest physical burden, drastically multiplying their time spent in the death zone simply to keep the whole commercial machine functioning. Finally, Section 5, regulating the roof, ethics and safety. Because of these terrifying conditions, the consensus from recent reporting is incredibly clear. Experts suggest that such congestion creates hazardous conditions, ultimately addressing the urgent need for stricter regulations. This is a massive turning point, really. It's no longer just about accepting personal risk as a normal part of extreme sports. Experts across the board are demanding immediate intervention. The data is clear. The current free-for-all approach is just completely unsustainable. We absolutely have to fix safety protocols and fundamentally address the ethics of how mountaineering operates at this massive scale. So, what are the actual solutions on the table? Let's walk through these proposed regulations. First, capping the total volume of permits issued. Put simply, the supply of climbers cannot exceed the mountain's actual physical capacity. Second, implementing much better traffic management strategies. This might look like coordinating between the various expedition companies so they aren't literally all pushing for the summit simultaneously. And third, enforcing stricter prior climbing experience requirements. This basically ensures that the people up on the mountain actually have the stamina and the skill to move efficiently, which directly reduces those fatal bottlenecks. Ultimately, these proposed rules aim to objectively solve the overcrowding crisis and protect both the eager climbers and those vital local guides from deadly, entirely preventable congestion. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a profound thought to chew on. If reaching the summit of Mount Everest requires standing and waiting in a human traffic jam at 29,000 feet, are we truly conquering the mountain, or have we just completely commercialized it? It's a question that really challenges the very spirit of exploration. We've seen the data, we've broken down the severe physical risks of these bottlenecks, and we've looked at the urgent calls for regulation. The next chapter of Everest's history depends entirely on how the climbing community chooses to answer that question. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and as always, keep questioning the realities behind the headlines.